Well, shalom, everybody. My name is Todd Bennett, and I'm going to read the latest newsletter from ShemaIsrael.net titled To Feast or to Fast. And this newsletter was sent out on December 11th, 2021, was day 6 of month 10 on the Creator's calendar. Last week we discussed Christmas and continued the discussion regarding true spiritual warfare. We ended off talking about Isaiah 58 and the true key to spiritual warfare, which involves letting Yah fight our battles. Interestingly, that portion of Isaiah connected being loosed and freed from bondage with fasting. And at first glance, one might ask, what on earth fasting has to do with warfare? Isn't a warrior supposed to be strong and full of energy? Fasting, as we all know, can make you weak and often depleted of energy and strength. Well, that's exactly the point. Fasting reveals the true source of our strength and how our battles really get won. And that's why Yeshua emphasized, I have food to eat which you do not know. My food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish the work. We read that in John 4:32 and 34. Now recall that Yeshua actually overcame the confrontation with Hashatan at the end of a 40-day fast. So fasting is clearly an important part of the battle that we all find ourselves in. The reason is because the process helps us to focus on the spiritual instead of the physical. When we're weak, we have no choice but to draw strength from him if we wish to succeed. So our food should be obedience and the goal to finish the work. Now, the Christmas season that supposedly celebrates the birth of the Messiah pays little attention to the actual teachings of the Messiah. It begins after a grand feast that occurs on Thanksgiving Day in America. And we're right in the middle of this season of feasting and festivities that derive straight from the Roman celebration of Saturnalia. The eating and feasting then continues until the first day of January, when people make resolutions to lose all the weight that they gained during the holiday season. Now, of course, January 1st is not the beginning of the year on the scriptural calendar. Last week we discussed some of the changes that Julius Caesar made to the ancient Roman calendar, and it was actually Roman King Numa Pompilius who added the month of January around 700 BCE. It was originally called Mensis Ionarius, the month of Ionus, or Janus, I should say. As we discussed last week, there was no letter J in existence in ancient Hebrew languages, or in ancient language, any ancient languages, and that's why it was impossible for the Messiah to be named Jesus. January, as we call it in English, is actually named after Janus, the Roman god of beginnings. And again, there was no J in the Latin language, so we call this god Janus, but it was really Janus. And Janus was the Roman god of beginnings, gates, and time. And that's why Janus is often depicted with two faces. He sees into the past and looks into the future. And this is where we get the tradition of New Year resolutions. People like Janus look to the past and they see the mistakes that they've made, and then they resolve to alter their behavior by looking to the future and deciding how to change that future through their actions. Now, it's really amazing the influence that pagan culture has over people, most of whom have no idea that they're immersed and molded by the traditions of ancient Rome. Now remember how Isaiah proclaimed, wake up, in Isaiah 52:1. Well, it is really shocking to wake up from the Babylonian stupor that most of us were born into. We've actually been living within an alternate reality, far removed from the reality of the true God of beginnings, Yah Elohim. He's the one who existed before anything, and he is the one who created time. His time is described in Genesis 1 along with his method of reckoning time. He built a free clock right into creation for all to see, the sun and the moon. And these two great lights, as they're described in the scriptures, were set in the heavens to divide the day from the night, and for signs and appointed times, and for days and years. And we read that in Genesis 1:14. We're supposed to be looking up at the lights in the sky, but most people are looking down at their smartphones to determine what time it is. As a result, most have no idea what time it is without the aid of a device or a printed calendar. Whatever resource they use, though, they're probably being told that we are in month 12. And as I mentioned last week, we're not in month 12. We're actually in month 10 on the Creator's calendar. And that month was never given a name by Yah. The exiles in Babylon attached the name Tevet to it. But we don't call these months names. Now, you might ask, does it really matter? It's just a number or a name of a month. Are numbers and names really that important? Well, if you believe the scriptures they are, we discussed the importance of the name of the Messiah last week and how people call him Jesus, but it's impossible for that to have been in his name, and how there's no other name under heaven and earth by which men might be saved. So I would say names are pretty important. And that was just one example. And read what the text of Revelation has to say about the subject. It says, "Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." So, there will be massive control over every strata of society, and it will focus on the specific identity of the beast, involving a name, a number, or a mark, also translated as a stamp. Now, there are some who strictly apply preterist interpretation to this passage, but it's important to understand that Rome never really went away. And all you have to do is go take a visit to Washington, D.C., and you'll see the fingerprints of Rome all over the nation's capital. We read in the text of Daniel that Nebuchadnezzar was provided with a vision of the image of the beast. And this relates to what we're dealing with now, even though it seems like it occurred so long ago. And we read in Daniel 2:31 through 33, "You, O king, were watching, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay." Now you can go on the internet and see all sorts of artistic renderings of these of the beast and the image of the beast, and they actually are quite nice to see how Babylon was the gold, and Persia, and then Greece, and then Rome. And Rome was described as the 4th kingdom, or the 4th beast. And Daniel was provided more information regarding the successive kingdoms that would make up this beast. The beast described in Revelation 13 is the fourth beast revealed to Daniel, and that one was different from all the others. It literally horrified him because of its scope and veracity. We read in Daniel 7:23, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it into pieces. And if you look at the Roman kingdom, how it split, the empire split into two different kingdoms, two different empires, just like you see two legs go down and span through time. And then if you look at the Holy Roman Empire and its influence over countries and kingdoms throughout time, and we see how this has just morphed and expanded into what we see today. Now we saw from the image of the beast that the fourth beast would be divided into two legs and feet, and with hindsight we can see that it spanned the centuries, transforming and spreading its tentacles throughout the world through a religious system that's now attempting to unite and corral the people of the world into one religion and one government. So this beast has ancient origins, and it has spanned through the centuries. And like Janus, it extends into the past and into the future. Its grasp upon mankind is tightening, as we can easily see. The good news is that Yeshua is coming to destroy the beast that enslaves his bride. He specifically will strike the fourth beast that evolved into feet of iron and clay. Now, this really describes the mixing of man and machine through transhumanism and artificial intelligence that's happening all around us. And it's through technology that the control system is being implemented upon the world. And we read in Daniel 2, 34 through 35, you watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away, so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Now, if we considered the appointed times, the summer threshing floors are busy and active at the time of Shabbat. So we don't know if this is just a metaphor. This is giving us a clue in time when this would happen. But we also read the promise of victory over the beast system in Revelation 17. It says, the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. For he is Adon of masters and King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. And that's good to remember. If you want to be with him, realize that you've been chosen. And just as a father chooses the bride, Yah has chosen you for his son. But we need to remain faithful to him in every way. Now, before all that destruction happens, the beast will be promoting a mark and a name and a number, accompanied by amazing signs. And this will draw people to the beast. And again, will we be faithful to Yeshua, or will we be drawn to the signs? And the question is, what signs will people look to? And what name and number will they carry? This is all a sifting process. It's all a test. And Yeshua stated, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. And as stated previously, we've already been provided with signs. We have the 2 great lights to tell us what time it is, and therefore signs. But most people fail to look into them. Those lights are our daily, weekly, monthly, and even yearly reminder of time. And they are also a reminder of the one who created time, Yah Elohim. So reckoning time as the Torah prescribes keeps us focused and in sync with the covenant plan of Yah. And it's an important part of our awakening and keeps us on the straight and narrow path that leads out of Babylon and to Zion. And that leads us back to the title of the message, which is to feast or to fast. And this is a timely message because once we realize that we are in month 10, we can discern that there is a fast in the 10th month that was significant to the covenant people. And it was actually acknowledged by Yah through the prophets. There's a traditional fast known as the fast of the 10th month that occurs on day 10 of month 10. And the fast commemorates the beginnings of the siege of Jerusalem by the Babylonians, as described in 2 Kings and in Jeremiah 52. It says, "Now it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his army came against Jerusalem and encamped against it. And they built a siege wall against it all around." Now remember, Nebuchadnezzar was called the servant of Yah because he was authorized by Yah to punish the house of Judah. Jeremiah specifically warned the people of this fact, and their response should have been to repent and to submit to the will of Yah, not to try to fight Nebuchadnezzar. Resisting and fighting Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian army actually placed them squarely in opposition to the will of Yah. And of course, that's something that we've been discussing over the past several weeks, is praying in the will of Yah. And we have to make sure that we are in his will, that we discern his will, that we understand his will, and that we operate in his will. And that's what got us into the issue of spiritual warfare. Many people are out trying to bind the devil and resist what's happening in this world when they need to understand that the beast is given authority. And we discussed last week how the beast that we currently see rising out of the nations is given authority. And remember that Nebuchadnezzar was the head of the image of the beast. And we're now seeing the feet described in Revelation 13. And we're in a similar position as those in Jerusalem who saw the city being surrounded. And the question is, how will you respond? This year, the fast lands on December 25th, 2021, which is next week. And while the world is feasting, would you instead choose to fast? The prophet Zechariah mentions the fast as part of an amazing promise of a future return. It says, "Thus says Yah of hosts, I am zealous over Zion with great zeal, with great fervor I am zealous for her. Thus says Yah, I will return to Zion and dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth, the mountain of Yah of hosts, the set-apart mountain. Thus says Yah of hosts, old men and old women shall again sit in the streets of Jerusalem, each one with a staff in his hand because of great age. The streets of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in its streets. Thus says Yah of hosts, if it is marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in these days, will it also be marvelous in my eyes, says Yah of hosts. Thus says Yah of hosts, behold, I will save my people from the land of the east and from the land of the west. I will bring them back, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. They shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim, in truth, in righteousness. Thus says Yah of hosts, let your hands be strong, you who have been hearing in these days these words by the mouth of the prophets who spoke in the day the foundation was laid for the house of Yah of hosts, that the temple might be built. For before these days there were no wages for man, nor any hire for beast. There was no peace from the enemy for whoever went out or came in. For I set all men, everyone against his neighbor. But now I will not treat the remnant of this people as in the former days, says Yah of hosts. For the seed shall be prosperous, the vine shall give its fruit, the ground shall give her increase, and the heavens shall give their due. I will cause the remnant of this people to possess all these. And it shall come to pass that just as you were a curse among the nations, O house of Yehudah, and house of Israel. So I will save you, and you shall be a blessing. Do not fear, let your hands be strong, for thus says Yahweh of hosts, just as I determined to punish you when your fathers provoked me to wrath, says Yahweh of hosts, and I will not relent. So again, in these days I am determined to do good to Jerusalem and to the house of Yehuda. Do not fear. These are the things you shall do. Speak each man the truth to his neighbor. Give judgment in your gates for truth, justice, and peace. Let none of you think evil in your heart against your neighbor, and do not love a false oath, for all these are things that I hate, says Yah. Then the word of Yah of hosts came to me, saying, Thus says Yah of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, the fast of the 5th, the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th shall be joy and gladness and cheerful fasts, cheerful feasts for the house of Yehuda. Therefore love truth and peace. Thus says Yah of hosts, peoples shall yet come, inhabitants of many cities. The inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, Let us continue to go and pray before Yah and seek Yah of hosts. I myself will go also. Yes, many peoples and strong nations shall come and seek Yah of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before Yah. Thus says Yah of hosts, in those days 10 men from every language of the nations shall grasp the sleeve of a Yehudi man, saying, Let us go with you, for we have heard that Elohim is with you. And that's Zechariah 8:2-23. Now, did you notice that the fast of the 10th month, along with the fast of the 4th month, the 5th month, and the 7th month, will be turned to cheerful feasts? Well, guess what? Well, the world is feasting. The people of Yah are still fasting on these dates. The fast of the 4th month occurs on day 17 of month 4 and commemorates Aaron's sin of making the golden calf. The fast of the 5th month occurs on day 9 of month 5 and commemorates the sin of believing the false report of the 10 spies. The fast of the 7th month is not referring to the fast associated with Yom Kippur. Instead, it's another traditional fast that occurs on day 4 of month 7, known as Zom Gedaliah. It commemorates the death of Gedaliah after the destruction of Jerusalem by Babylon. Now, all of these traditional fast days, acknowledged through Zechariah, are still commemorated as fasts. So we've not seen the fulfillment of this prophecy yet. The promise is that these fast days will be turned into feasts. And it culminates with a Yehudi man, not a Jewish man, as many Bibles mistranslate. The Yehudi man is Yeshua the Messiah, and you need to take hold of his tzitzit. Now, many English translations have his sleeve, but if you get down into the Hebrew, it's talking about his tzitzit on the corners of his garment. And I discuss this portion of prophecy in a video entitled, Whose Tzitzit Are You Grasping? That can be found on the YouTube site. The tzitzit represent the commandments, and the point is that we need to follow him and obey the commandments as he teaches them. And we read in Numbers 15, Speak to the children of Israel, tell them to make tzitzit on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue thread in the tzitzit of the corners, and you shall have the tzitzit that you may look upon it, and remember all the commandments of Yah, and do them, and that you may not follow the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined, and that you may remember and do all my commandments, and be holy, which is set apart for your Elohim. So Yah is zealous for his people. He wants us to be holy or set apart, and fasting instead of feasting on day 10 of month 10 is a good reminder of where we belong, Rome or Jerusalem, Babylon or Zion. Now, if we circle back to Zechariah, we can glean even more as we consider the context as it relates to our future. It says, Now the messenger who talked with me came back and wakened me, as a man who is wakened out of his sleep. And he said to me, What do you see? So I said, I am looking, and there's a menorah of solid gold with a bowl on top of it. And on the stand, 7 lamps and 7 pipes to the 7 lamps. 2 olive trees are by it, one at the right of the bowl and the other at its left. So I answered and spoke to the messenger who talked with me, saying, What are these, Adonai? Then the messenger who talked with me answered and said to me, Do you not know what these are? And I said, No, Adonai. So he answered and said to me, This is the word of Yah to Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says Yah of hosts. Who are you, O great mountain before Zerubbabel? You shall become a plain, and he shall bring forth the capstone with shouts of grace, grace, which is chen chen in Hebrew. Chen chen to it. Moreover, the word of Yah came to me, saying, The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this temple. His hands shall also finish it. Then you will know that Yah of hosts has sent me to you. For who has despised the day of small things? For these 7 rejoice to see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. They are the eyes of Yah, which scan to and fro throughout the whole earth. Then I answered and said to him, What are these 2 olive trees at the right of the lampstand and to its left? And I further answered and said to him, What are these 2 olive branches that dip into the receptacles of the 2 gold pipes from which the golden oil drains? Then he answered me and said, Do you not know what these are? And I said, No, Adonai. So he said, These are the 2 anointed ones who stand beside the Adon of the whole earth. Now this is an amazing vision that has implications for us and our circumstances. And the point of it all is that Yah has plans, and he will complete them through his servants. We simply need his chen, which is his favor. And when we have his favor, the mountain that stands before us becomes a plain. He'll remove all obstacles from our path. We can take comfort in that assurance. And it's also important to recognize that the events that occurred after the kingdom of Israel was divided provide significant patterns for our future, particularly after the house of Israel was exiled by the Assyrians. Events occurred that provide patterns for the return of the house of Israel and the restoration of the kingdom by the Messiah. And I'm going to talk more about timing next week. We saw a pattern of destruction, exile, and return through the house of Yehuda that led to the revelation of Yeshua as Messiah, son of Joseph. That restoration was not complete, though, and ended in another destruction and exile because the house of Israel remained scattered throughout the world. And as I mentioned in previous newsletters, all of what we see happening now is about Joseph and about the restoration of Israel with the house of Yehuda, these 2 houses coming together in one nation under Messiah. So when we look at things in context, all these world events, we shouldn't be worrying or fearing. We should be in awe that Yah is working out his promises and his plan, and we have been favored to be involved in it and actually witness it. And we certainly look forward to the return of Yeshua as Messiah, son of David. Through that process, we anticipate the return of both exiled houses, and which he will ultimately unite into one unified kingdom as David did. And we recall the prophecy of the 2 sticks in Ezekiel 37 that describes that unification, that bringing together those 2 sticks, the 2 houses in the hand of the Messiah. As a result, when we read much of the text of Revelation, we see similar scenes and beings that are described in this text of Zechariah that I just read. These same beings that participated in the past restoration and building of the temple will be involved in the future restoration of the kingdom, and we need to be ready to participate. Now, recall that Zerubbabel had returned along with some of the remnant from Babylon. He left his comfortable life in Babylon and went back to the land to rebuild the temple. Everything was amazing at first. When the people began their work, they were excited and motivated, and then problems began. They were attacked and they became distracted and demoralized. The work became a struggle. They became overwhelmed with the task at hand, and things eventually came to a grinding halt. The temple of Yah remained unfinished while people went about living their normal lives. And remember previously when David brought the ark into the city of David and he set up the tabernacle of David for Yah? He built his palace while Yah remained in a tent. And what a profound moment that must have been when the reality of the whole situation set in. His priorities had gone awry until it struck him right in the face, and he then set about the planning and preparations for the house of Yah. Well, the remnant that returned from Babylon had a similar experience, and they needed to get their priorities realigned. The situation was described in the text of Haggai, and we read it. In the second year of King Darius, in the 6th month, on the first day of the month, the word of Yah came to Haggai, the prophet to Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Yehuda, and to Yahushua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, saying, Thus speaks Yah of hosts, saying, This people says the time has not come, the time that Yahuwah's house should be built. Then the word of Yah came to Haggai the prophet, saying, Is it time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses, and this temple to lie in ruins? Now therefore, says Yah of hosts, consider your ways. You have sown much and bring in little. You eat, but do not have enough. You drink, but you are not filled with drink. You clothe yourselves, but no one is warm. And he who earns wages to put into a bag with holes. Thus says Yah, consider your ways. Go up to the mountains and bring wood and build the temple, that I may take pleasure in it and be glorified, says Yah. You looked for much, but indeed it came to little. And when you brought it home, I blew it away. Why? Says Yah of hosts. Because of my house that is in ruins, while every one of you runs to his own house. Therefore the heavens above you withhold the dew, and the earth withholds its fruit. For I called for a drought on the land and the mountains, on the grain and the new wine and the oil, on whatever the ground brings forth, on men and livestock, and on all the labor of the hands. Then Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, and Yahushua the son of Jehozadak the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, obeyed the voice of Yah their Elohim and the words of Haggai the prophet, as Yah their Elohim had sent him, and the people feared the presence of Yah. Then Haggai, Yahuwah's messenger, spoke Yahuwah's message to the people, saying, I am with you, says Yah. So Yah stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Yahushua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of his people. And he came and worked on the house of Yah of hosts, their Elohim. Now, this is amazing because the people had actually left Babylon, and they were supposed to be rebuilding Jerusalem and the temple that Babylon destroyed. Instead, they lost focus and began building their own houses. And I believe this is a prophetic picture of our future. We hear so much about the housing market because we live in a culture that's obsessed with houses, and we're so removed from the heritage of our ancestors in the faith who dwelled in tents and were ready to move, and recognize that Yah brought a drought. He brought famine. He brought a lack of things to get people's attentions, so that people would consider their ways and wake up and say, gee, why are things happening the way they're happening? Why is my normal not normal anymore? And when those situations happen, it's usually because he's trying to get our attention that something's wrong. We have to realign our focus. We have to get in line with his plan. We have to understand his will and start working towards his will, and that brings pleasure to him. So we need to be ready to leave Babylon behind and move whenever Yah directs, we need to be ready to dwell in tents while we see his plans to completion. And sometimes this is a metaphor, but it may become very real very fast at future Passover and Sukkot. And that's why we literally rehearse these appointed times. We don't just celebrate the appointed times. Now, did you notice that when the modern state of Israel took possession of the Promised Land, they never even attempted to rebuild the temple? Even when they took control of Jerusalem in 1967, they didn't take the Temple Mount, which is the traditional site of the temple. Now, I believe the Temple Mount is actually the site of the Roman fortress Antonia, which was the headquarters of the 10th Roman Legion in Jerusalem, but that's another conversation, which I usually discuss on a tour, but maybe I'll discuss that in one of our future newsletters. The reason that the modern state of Israel didn't even attempt to rebuild the temples because they and the state, the people and the modern state, were founded by Zionists. Although that has a religious ring to it, Zionism has nothing to do with restoring the covenant of Yah through a reunited covenant people obedient to the Torah. Zionism is actually a secular political movement focused exclusively on establishing a homeland for the Jewish people. And that's why most of the Israeli population is atheist or agnostic, and that's why the state of Israel is diametrically opposed to Yeshua, the Messiah. And when you do see pictures of Jerusalem and you see religious people, they are typically rabbinic Jews, but the country is not does not subscribe to any particular religion, even though the rabbinic Jews carry a lot of political clout in the country. So the modern state of Israel and the Jewish people who are not in covenant with Elohim are not the ones who will build the house of Elohim, and neither are the Pharisees, who are the modern day rabbinic Jews. Now, don't misunderstand me. They may try and they may build a structure to support the Jesuit teaching that Daniel's 70th week remains unfulfilled. I'm going to talk more about this next week, but basically the Jesuits deceived many Christians and Messianic believers through their counter-Reformation teaching that the 70th week of the timeline given by Gabriel remains waiting fulfillment. They actually have many prophecy teachers attributing the past work of the Messiah to a future anti-Messiah, and as a result, many are actually supporting and anticipating an Antichrist, or rather anti-Messiah temple. And this is really messed up, and I actually did a short YouTube teaching overlooking the Temple Mount a couple of years ago, warning people to beware of the plans of men to build a temple. So many have been caught up in this thing, this deception, and they believe that it's necessary to restore the sacrifices. And so now they're off looking for red heifers and the Ark of the Covenant, actually serving as pawns for the Pharisees. And as a result of this deception, we may see a temple or some structure built on the land owned by Rome in Jerusalem. In fact, the beast that is given authority may actually call down fire to ignite an altar before this temple, and that will likely blow people's minds, and many unlearned and gullible people will likely be deceived. And over the past 2 decades, I've seen many people walk away from the Messiah in order to follow the sorcery and witchcraft of Kabbalism that's built into the Jewish religion. Well, the bottom line is that political Zionists have no right or claim to the title of Zion, and the same holds true for the modern state of Israel. They don't have any claim to the label of Yisrael, who are the covenant people with Yah. They're both misappropriating what belongs to Yah. And it's important to understand that any new temple built by the Pharisees will not be the place that Yah calls home. The only lasting house that Yah will authorize is the one built by his only begotten Son, Yeshua the Messiah. Yeshua said he went to prepare a place for us, and he's returning with that place, the New Jerusalem. We may see Ezekiel's temple built during the millennial reign, but even that will not endure past the renewal of the heavens and the earth after the millennial reign is concluded. The New Jerusalem will descend on the 8th day at the completion of the 7th millennium. But that's something far in the future. Right now, there are people currently scattered throughout the world, trapped within the fourth beast of Rome. And there may come a day when they will be called to return and rebuild. And I suspect most won't. Most will choose to remain in their houses unless Yah makes it uncomfortable like he did with the Israelites in Egypt. It's likely that only a remnant will choose to leave Rome and return to rebuild what Rome destroyed in the covenant land. It's important that we remember it's not by our might or by our power. Otherwise, we may get overwhelmed and defeated when confronted by the evil schemes of the fourth beast. Yah will destroy the powerful nations, and he has a feast planned for those who find their strength in him. And we read that promise in Isaiah as well. It says, "For you have been a strength to the poor, a strength to the needy in his distress, a refuge from the storm, a shadow from the heat. For the blast of the terrible ones is as a storm against the wall. You will reduce the noise of aliens as heat in a dry place, as heat in the shadow of a cloud. The song of the terrible ones will be diminished, and in this mountain Yah of hosts will make for all people a feast of choice pieces, a feast of wines in the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of well-refined wines on the lees. And he will destroy on this mountain the surface of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death forever, and Adonai Yah will wipe away tears from their faces. The rebuke of his people he will take away from all the earth, for Yah has spoken. And it will be said in that day, Behold, this is our Elohim. We have waited for him, and he will save us. This is Yah. We have waited for him. We will be glad and rejoice in his salvation." So we began the discussion with Isaiah detailing the power and importance of fasting, and we end with Isaiah promising a great feast for the people of Elohim. Next week may be a good time to demonstrate that you are one of his people, waiting for him and separating from Babylon on day 10 of month 10, which is December 15th, and fasting instead of feasting. Yeshua stated that his coming would be like the days of Noah and the days of Lot. He says, "And as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone, even heaven, and destroyed them all. Even so will it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed." That's in Luke 17:26-30. Society is unraveling right before our eyes. Nevertheless, the world continues eating, drinking, and feasting throughout this holiday season. They fail to see the invading army surrounding them as the beast rises from the sea. Their hearts will ultimately fail them from fear because they are unprepared for the coming of the Son of Man. Therefore, the people of Elohim who wait upon him continue to fast. We understand that judgment is coming, but we know that a great feast will follow. Barakot. My name is Todd Bent from Shammai Israel, and that's the end of the newsletter. I'm going to be posting some prayer requests because there's various people that need prayer right now, and I invite you to visit the section on the Shammai Israel website where we offer people an opportunity to post prayers and pray for people. And so I encourage you to go to the site and check that out and participate in this community that we have been developing. Until next week, shalom and peace to all of you.